Tariq Martyn, you're out in Paraguay.
Yes, and you're not here, Rob.
I offer my apologies.
That's very, very good of you. Did Donald Trump make you a better offer by any chance?
Unfortunately, I didn't get an invite to state dinners in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. That's not my excuse for not being at the FIFA Congress.
Well, we've been here all week with all the other FIFA delegates, waiting and waiting and waiting for the grand arrival. And when it arrived, Rob, chaos.
Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked with Martyn Ziegler from the Times, Tariq Panja from the New York Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. And it might seem familiar territory talking about Gianni Infantino and FIFA, but he's in the news yet again around a FIFA Congress that potentially had seemed like it could be dull, but so much news, largely around Gianni Infantino's late arrival.
Yeah, people who listened last week would know that he decided to go to the Gulf with Donald Trump, and that necessitated the FIFA Council meeting being moved from being in person in Paraguay to a video conference. And then when we got here, it just sounded like there's going to be more delays. And then on the morning of the Congress, delegates got an email saying that due to unforeseen circumstances, it was going to have to be delayed again. There was a lot of widespread anger and resentment, and people really a bit annoyed about that they've come all this way. It's not the easiest place to get to. And Gianni Infantino's private jet was held up for some reason, and it just didn't, for many people, it just felt a bit disrespectful.
Well, when he did arrive, he offered his profuse apologies.
And fortunately, Tariq, you recorded it on your phone because it wasn't on the live stream. This might be a rare recording.
Let me just start by presenting you my apologies for the inconvenience of having had to move the Congress kickoff time. Apologies also for having arrived later than what I would have wanted. And apologies for not having participated at the great football tournament. Felicidades a Conmebol for winning the football tournament, because I didn't play. Let's face it. But it's okay. It's okay. You know, everyone has a chance in football to win. And Conmebol is the champion this time. So again, apologies, but I just want to explain you that, of course, as president of FIFA, I have the responsibility, as you know, to not just to lead the organization, but also to take decisions in the interest of the organization. And therefore, I decided, and I want to give you all this explanation, I decided to be the last 2 days in the Middle East, knowing that the 2034 World Cup will be in Saudi Arabia, that the 2022 World Cup was in Qatar, and that the 25 Club World Cup, as well as the 26 World Cup, will be 25 only the United States, 26 United States, Canada, and Mexico. So obviously some important discussions took place there with regard to the World Cup, with some world leaders in politics and in economy. And I felt I need to be there to represent all of you, to represent football. I thought as well I could make it on time, but unfortunately we had a little issue with our flight, which made that this delay happen. Again, apologies, sorry. Let's look now forward. Let's start the Congress. I'm looking forward to spending time with you all.
I got a text from other people, Graham Dunbar, for example, from the Associated Press, friend of the pod, who said, was there an apology? And there was, because there wasn't on this stream. And we're not sure, though. It would be speculation to say whether that was done deliberately or not. But it does remind us that in this age of everything being online, sometimes you do need to try and be there to see exactly what happened. And in terms of his arrival, let's just have a think about where he was. It's very far from where we are in Asunción in Paraguay, which is a tiny country which is between Brazil and Argentina, squeezed in there. Gianni Infantino had traveled from the United States with Donald Trump, first to Saudi Arabia, where he met with Mohammed bin Salman and part of the US delegation there. In fact, in Saudi Arabia, he had a very prominent role. If you look at the pictures, he was sat right alongside the crown prince there, and that was quite striking. He was closer than someone like, say, Marco Rubio, the chief diplomat for the United States.
And there was a big announcement there when he was on the front row with Mohammed bin Salman, when Donald Trump announced that sanctions on Syria would be lifted by the United States since the downfall of Bashar al-Assad.
He then got his own round of applause.
Riyadh is becoming not just a seat of government, but a major business, cultural, and high-tech capital of the entire world. The World Cup is here. Johnny, just stand up, John. Johnny, thank you, Johnny. Great job, Johnny, great job. But the World Cup and the World Expo will soon be coming here, just like the World Cup is coming to the United States. It's going to be really exciting next year.
He was basically feted in Saudi Arabia because he's delivered the World Cup. And Donald Trump, as Martyn pointed out, pretty much alluded to the fact Gianni might have done it for Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, FIFA have always, and Infantino himself have always insisted that this wasn't him delivering the World Cup to Saudi Arabia. It was a FIFA Council decision, and this was not an individual sort of reward for their support for him. But Donald Trump seemed to think the opposite, because he was saying, "Great job, Gianni, great job." But I suppose when he has this close access with these people, obviously the World Cup hosts, is that justification, do you think, for what he's done? Would he have been better off in Paraguay meeting local associations, or actually is he sort of being at those front row seats, getting things done that needs to be done for World Cups?
He went on to Qatar at the Lusail Palace. There was a state dinner, and at it he was there with the Emir of Qatar and President Trump signing a World Cup ball from 2022. So football front and centre, which is what Infantino said in his apology to the Congress, showed the status of football and about the importance of these World Cups. Obviously, let's go to the UEFA statement at this point, should we? Because this isn't us talking about this. Why is this a big deal to talk about? It's because UEFA put out a statement after the Congress, and we can get into how that looked in the room in Paraguay. But the UEFA statement said, which was highly unusual given the fact tensions had seemingly thawed between FIFA and UEFA. This is what the statement said. The last-minute changes to the timings of the FIFA Congress are deeply regrettable. That's referring to it being delayed, lunch having to take place before the Congress starting, as well as the council taking place last week. The UEFA statement continues. The FIFA Congress is one of the most important meetings in world football, where all 211 nations in the world's game gather to discuss issues that affect the sport right across the world. Our host, the Paraguay FA, and our partners at CONMEBOL had gone to considerable effort to accommodate so many delegates, and we thank them for their hospitality. You should mention at this point, the Paraguay president was left waiting.
That's right. Panja, he was left waiting, and we can get into what he said. But also, in terms of the scene, Paraguay really pulled out all the stops here. I mean, in terms of the security presence, there was military everywhere. There was, as a cab driver told me, look at that giant tank. I haven't seen one of those since the coup. So, I mean, there was a lot of military, a lot of security. And look, this is not a wealthy country. These people were given everything to be comfortable here. And the other point, it's not just the Congress. It's not just the 3 hours that happens when you're in the room. The point of the Congress for a lot of these people is to get face time with the FIFA president. You know, these are 211 or 210 FAs who are here, and to talk to them about their own problems. And you get a chance once a year, maybe, and maybe other times. But this is his meeting, and he wasn't here, and people did feel that.
So to continue that UEFA statement, so it goes on to say, to have the timetable changed at the last minute for what appears to be simply to accommodate private political interests does the game no service and appears to put its interests second. We are all imposed to serve football from the streets to the podium, and UEFA members of the FIFA Council felt the need on this occasion to make a point that the game comes first and to leave as originally scheduled. That's about the early exit, the walkout.
Yes, so the 8 European FIFA Council members didn't appear after the coffee break. And Gianni Infantino I thought he seemed rattled by this, actually. He kept saying, come on, everybody, let's go. And there were these empty seats. He was given no warning, and it appeared to be given no warning anyway. And it was humiliating for him, I think, certainly embarrassing. And this is unprecedented. Nothing like this I can think about has happened before. And I suppose you ask questions now. What does this mean? Is it going to have longer term effects for Infantino's power, or does it actually mean nothing at all?
The power structures might mean it has no impact. If you've got a large part of the world beyond Europe supporting you, then who's going to resist? Who's going to oppose? Particularly when, as a lot of the Congress was talking about, more money for all the MAs, more inclusivity in terms of making competitions bigger, bringing more of them into the competitions of the world, making football truly global as the message is, even while the orbit can be focused around the United States and Saudi, particularly, from the leadership of FIFA.
Yeah. I mean, the long-term effect of this, let's say, apart from personal animosity, it's not as if, as we know, a lot of these people personally like Infantino anyway. So it's not a massive damage to a friendship that Infantino had with European football figures. Look, the other thing is not all of the European federations left the room. Some did as well. So we've got, Martyn mentioned the council members left. Yes, they did. There were some football federation presidents like Lisa Klaveness, outspoken Lisa Klaveness from Norway, who's recently been appointed to the UEFA executive committee after trying for so many years. She left as well. She put out her own statement along similar lines, and she was the first to do that. But let me ask, if you have something to say and you want to make a protest, saying you're angry about something, you're in the Congress with all of the other members of FIFA. There is a forum there to actually raise your hand and say, look, we would like to make a statement about why we are unhappy in the room. And we've had that before. Famously in 2002, I think, in Korea, there was the standoff between the son of the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, Saad al-Gaddafi, and Karen Epsilon from Norway, which was just bizarre. We've had we had the English FA taking the podium as well.
And this week we had the Palestine FA as well, lodging their concerns about an ongoing review that hasn't reached a conclusion in terms of their hope that Israel faces sanctions over the disputed territories and the ongoing war in Gaza, something that has not gathered the wider support. But that's how you use your moment at the Congress to speak out.
You do. So there was an opportunity there, and so there's an element of I suppose grandstanding there. And then we were waiting for so long. The statement eventually came out, and look, this was planned. It wasn't like they went to the tea break and they just left. I feel like this had been coming. We got sense of it in the morning before the Congress had started. That this could happen, and they did that. So, look, I don't know. Like, how does it look? They've clearly shown their displeasure, but is that the right way? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly other people from other confederations who were very unhappy about it, but chose to keep their counsel. So maybe I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to flex your muscles, but other people took other routes. And for example, I mean, they're obviously hosting the Congress, but South America, CONMEBOL, they've got their own things that they want to achieve. And one of those things is getting more matches at the 2030 World Cup. Alejandro Dominguez made a sort of plea for that.
It was more than a plea just for more matches. He was almost suggesting the whole world should be invited to the 2030 World Cup, all 211.
Well, exactly. But so they have got this proposal to expand it from 48 to 64 teams, which I don't think anyone seriously thinks is going to happen. But I do think there'll be some sort of deal where they get more games. And in order
because currently they just have a game each, isn't it? Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina.
That's correct, to mark the centenary. So you can see them get.
Then it all shifts to Spain, Morocco, and Portugal for the bulk of it.
Correct. I can see some sort of deal where they each get a group, so 3 matches each, with the opening match in Uruguay to mark the centenary, which would mean sort of taking away from Spain and Portugal and Morocco. So obviously that's controversial, but you can see that happening. Maybe, one thing that they Alejandro Dominguez announced just today was the tower at the posh hotel which CONMEBOL owns. They've built a new tower, and it's been called the Infantino Tower, so he leaves an indelible mark on the country that is also his home.
Well, Mark's in that hotel, guys. It's called the CONMEBOL Bourbon Hotel, opposite the CONMEBOL headquarters here in Luque, which is just next to Asuncion. It reminded me, there was another plaque there in 2015. And this plaque was when the hotel was opened, and it said, these people were all present on the day this hotel was inaugurated. And it listed 10 CONMEBOL presidents. Every single one of them was indicted for corruption in 2015 by the United States. And funny enough, that plaque is now no longer in the hotel, but it just shows you, doesn't it, that giving Gianni this name and this plaque, are they as upset as the Europeans? Given that they hosted it, it seems the Europeans are more upset than anyone.
Infantino Tower. Now, there's another name that is associated with the word tower as well.
Yes, Trump Tower, which also has historical associations with dodgy football, because that's where CONCACAF was based back in the Chuck Blazer, Jack Warner days.
Do you think we're going to get a load of Infantino Towers now around the world? Is this the honour that a Congress host city or World Cup host city bestows on the FIFA presidents? Obviously, we're used to football stadiums being named after individuals.
No, yeah. I mean, it's bizarre though, isn't it? After all of this, the week he left the president of the state waiting. And yeah, to have this tower. I mean, perhaps it shows you the power of the office in terms of what you can bestow and how deals are done. If you're very, very nice to someone, they might give you something. And also, don't forget, there was the famous other former FIFA president, Sepp Blatter. There was the João Havelange Centre of Excellence in Trinidad and Tobago, which was built with FIFA money, but seemingly owned by the now disgraced Jack Warner. That also featured a Sepp Blatter wedding hall. So maybe in keeping with FIFA presidents, you get your names on buildings.
Now, of course, it would be great to have FIFA on the pod, but maybe put ourselves in their mindset. If we think back to the Women's World Cup, there were sort of grumbles about why the UEFA leadership didn't go to the final in Sydney. So, they had concerns about why their event didn't have the UEFA leadership fully there. Why might there be a reason for a UEFA protest in some form? Obviously, they are battling over the status of competitions, maybe, over the Club World Cup and its growth versus the protection of the current Champions League.
Yeah, there's definitely tension there over the Club World Cup and the Champions League. And I think we've seen that for many years. I just wonder if we are going to see things change, because we're going to have a situation where Gianni Infantino, in a few years' time, is going to be coming towards the end of his term limit, and I think there's already questions about whether he's going to try and stand again and get the statutes changed, and this, I think, might set back any of those plans.
There's also discussion whether Donald Trump will also try and stay on for a third term, which, it seems it's against the law now, but, the world is in a different place. But in terms of the UEFA guys, we have to be clear, this is the second Congress in a row that the UEFA president, Alexander Shefrin, and some senior officials have left early. This was in Bangkok, of course, last year, when they left before the bidding for the Women's World Cup, in which there were European candidates, Germany, Belgium, and Holland against Brazil. Before that vote, they'd left the Congress. So again, it's interesting. They're saying, this is disrespectful to the Congress and what football's about. When I feel like they did this last year, they blamed I think at that time there was travel commitments, and the weird thing there was, like this time, they traveled on the private jet, which is owned by the Hungarian FIFA Council member Sandor Shani. So I wonder if times could be changing that. But it's the second one in a row. And also Sheikh Salman of the AFC, the Asian football president, he also wasn't here, and there's been no explanation for that either.
Wasn't anywhere all week at the Congress?
No, he didn't travel, and we don't particularly know why. It is a strange one.
Well, it's a couple of weeks since Gianni Infantino didn't go to the Asian Champions League final in Saudi.
The other thing, obviously, is yet again there was no post-Congress press conference by Gianni Infantino, and I think I actually missed a trick there, because if he had been able to give an explanation and address some of the issues, then I think it would actually have been better PR for FIFA. But there was absolutely no indication at all, and Matthias Grasstrom did come out, the Secretary General of FIFA, and spoke at a mix zone, but he was very reluctant to answer any questions in any detail at all, perhaps understandably.
Just a comment on, it seems like the Europeans left halfway through the Congress. Lisa Klaveness put a statement out. She said she felt essentially disrespected by the FIFA president coming late. He didn't respect the Congress. What do you think of them walking out of the Congress late?
I think the president explained at the beginning of the Congress the reasons and also apologized. And then I don't have any further comments on
about the Europeans walking out.
Europeans, no.
Will you be trying to contact them to see exactly what happened, or is that just in the past now already?
We have an excellent relationship with UEFA and also with the European members. So
it didn't feel like that when they left, though. That's the.
Yeah. I don't have any.
But do you think in some ways disrespectful to leave the Congress in that way?
I don't have any further comments. I said what I had to say about this.
But yes, what about the proposal of Palestine today that was very critical of what FIFA hasn't done so far from the point of view of Palestine?
Well, we have our committees, our independent committees are working on the topic. And as I explained in my statement, the work is ongoing. We have now new members also in those two committees, and their work will continue until they've come to a conclusion.
Will this committee visit Israel and Palestine?
That's up for them to decide what they need to do in order to take a decision.
What do you think actually about your president coming 2 days later and the Congress being removed?
I don't have any comments about it. He explained the reasons why he was delayed. He had important matters to deal with, and we've had a great Congress here. I think the last days have been a great host with Paraguay and with CONMEBOL, so I think we had a nice Congress today, so very happy.
Matthias, Matthias, CONMEBOL put forward this proposal to look at 64 teams. Has there been any discussions about giving them more than one match? For, each of the South American countries, giving them more than one match? Have there been any discussions about that?
Well, I think today both the president of CONMEBOL and the FIFA president posed an open question about the centenary World Cup, and but all ideas are welcome, but no specific ideas have been discussed. So.
There was an ability to actually ask questions from effectively the FIFA number 2 on the record. The thing about not having a press conference is just how often the journalism industry works. Late European time on Thursday night, we had the UEFA statement, which made headlines. Had Gianni Infantino then perhaps given a press conference, it might have been him in the headlines, even him defending going to Saudi, going to Qatar, which he said in part in the speech about, of course, if you're invited as a president of FIFA, it shows the status of football, the fact you're honoured in that way. Just observation as well. I think if you were the president of handball or netball or badminton and you were invited to join Donald Trump on a Mideast tour of such grandeur, you might actually skip your own sports meetings because it would be more important.
Yeah, but to be clear, handball desperately needs all the help it can, and any other sport, really, football is enormous. It's not like with the little bowl, begging bowl. FIFA's revenues, even without any Saudi support or any of this stuff, are in the several billions and will be, not because they are FIFA. They are in charge of the world's most popular sport, one of the biggest social constructs we have in the world.
The biggest brand in sports, Gianni Infantino told the Congress FIFA.
Well, debatable whether they're the biggest brand, but they have this one. They don't need it. That's the weird thing. He's saying, look, I was over there doing this work for you. It's really important. From a financial point of view, FIFA really doesn't need this. What does it spend its money on? It's almost got too much money. It distributes this cash around the world to these federations. And here we are in Paraguay, one of the countries that gets some of this money. There's some incredible football facilities that we've seen here built from this money. Now, perhaps he should be here and doing the job, meeting the members. That said, Donald Trump is a very capricious individual. FIFA has the World Cup there in 2026, and you do need to be close to him, but you need to be with him everywhere he goes.
Are you just saying that because FIFA have a rival podcast, a Club World Cup podcast?
Have they?
It doesn't create many waves. Maybe we've got more listeners inside FIFA for us.
Oh, we should do some data analysis. It does strike you as it always seemed to me previously that governments and countries were sort of desperate to sort of cozy up to the FIFA and the International Olympic Committee because they were desperate to host these events. Now it seems that the kind of almost as though the worm has turned, and it's football's governing body, FIFA, which is cozying up to the governments, which even though they already have these tournaments. Which
is it FIFA though? Is it FIFA or is it the FIFA president?
Well, yeah, that's true. But yes, I do think this increasing lack of communication is a big challenge. There was nothing, for example, laid on to speak to Alejandro Dominguez, the Commonwealth president. There was no opportunity to speak to him, get a sort of wider message across, which I think is very strange because if you're hosting a Congress, why wouldn't you do a speak to the international media?
Particularly when you've gone all the way there, a long trip.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mind you, he might have been slightly embarrassed because I was going to ask him, having spoken to the French Federation, if they had had a response to their complaint about the racist song sung by Argentina players after the Copa America last year. The French Federation still waiting for a response, and I would certainly have put that to Mr. Dominguez.
There is another reason. I mean, while we've been here, there have been a slew of stories about his alleged misconduct. There was a story written in Argentina about a possible ethics complaint being filed related to some financial dealings. Here in Paraguay, there was a senator who stood up in Parliament and accused him of trying to, in her words, extort a construction magnate here over a building. Then there are the issues, we've talked about them, with his son and an oil deal involving a company based in Qatar. So there are a load of questions. You could see maybe why he might not want to answer them. But again, Rob, you were there with us in Belfast. It's the only time, and it was horrible, wasn't it? We got 3 minutes, just rushed questions to Gianni Infantino about very significant things, including how the Saudi World Cup was given to them, the relationship with Trump, all of that. We haven't had a chance to have a proper, long, organised press conference with him when all these questions just keep piling up.
And crucially, perhaps from that exchange in Belfast, there was no misspeaking. No harm came of Gianni Infantino facing the media. It was his ability to put his voice across and his viewpoint across. Something about this whole Congress week, the late arrival of Gianni Infantino in some way saves things for you. It gave you a headline. What would the headline have been of FIFA Congress Day had it not been for the UEFA walkout, the UEFA protest, which in some way makes me think, particularly because the council meeting was last week where the decisions were made, that there wasn't another announcement saved up to create a different Congress headline, even though while on the journey over to Paraguay, he knew he was going to be late. And perhaps that's the moment where you think of, well, how do we create an alternative news cycle? Something that we actually do see from Donald Trump, where he will throw a new idea, a new suggestion, a new policy out there, which creates a diversionary headline.
Rob, music to people's ears, because I was with a FIFA official who was praising you, Rob, for your comments about how they could improve their communications and what tactics they could use. And there you are again, giving them some great advice of what they could have done to create some better headlines.
If they're listening to Sport Unlocked, it's the it's the way we look at how we would go about reporting on a FIFA Congress as well. And, I think when you go in there, you actually want something to be able to talk about, to report on. That's new.
Yeah, well, it's strange because, his big buddy, Donald Trump, has spoken to media more times than any other president in US history during the opening months of his presidency. And I think it's fair to say Gianni Infantino has spoken less to the media than any other president in FIFA history. So those are interesting comparisons. One thing we should say is that in a way, both Tariq and I are lucky to be able to still be doing this podcast and to be talking to you, Rob.
Why was that?
Well, Rob, I think I'm going to have nightmares about this for years to come. It was Martyn, myself, Adam Crafton from The Athletic, and Samindra Kunti, freelance journalist who covers FIFA. We went to meet with some CONCACAF and OFC officials, including Ryan Nelson, former Blackburn Rovers captain, played for Tottenham Hotspur as well, for Tottenham fans who remember him, former New Zealand captain. Big man.
The distinction of being part of a New Zealand team that managed to leave the World Cup without losing a match.
Correct. That's a great quiz question. He was also joined by the pretty significantly sized big man from the Trinidad FA president, the general secretary of Trinidad, and an official from the US. And Martyn, what happened?
Well, we were going up to the 15th floor, the top floor of this building in a lift, and it was a big lift. So I think there were 11 or 12 of us and got into the lift, and the doors closed, and I suddenly saw this sign saying maximum occupancy 6 people and the weight limit. I just said there were some big men in there, and anyway, as the lift went up, it suddenly lurched and dropped near the 8th floor. We tried to get out and we couldn't.
Well, why couldn't we get out? I mean, this thing was also terrifying. It was like we'd be so the door opens after this absolutely terrifying little drop there, and the door to get out was locked. So it was like being in a Bourne film or something. We thought, this is it. This is how we're going to end. And then the door closes again. Instead of going down, the only button we could press was going higher. And then it only got worse from there.
Yeah, another sort of big lurch and drop. And I think everyone was sweating heavily. And again, we couldn't go down. We could only go up. We finally got to the 15th floor. And I think everyone was mightily relieved. And suffice to say, when we came down, we were in much smaller groups.
It is a terrifying experience. The one thing I can't believe is you didn't record anything well in that situation. That's what you need for a podcast. You need the sound.
Oh, mate, I don't know. The sound, it was terrifying. I was saying, what a way to go, trapped in a lift with Ryan Nelson at a FIFA Congress. We spent about so much time with these people. It kind of would have been like, I don't know, Ziggs? Was that the way it's going to end?
Yeah, I was just working out in which order of the names that was going to be read out. The terrible disaster that happened and affected Tariq, Panja, Ryan Nelson, Trinidad and Tobago, Secretary General, and then Martyn Ziegler at last.
Well, you would have got on the Congress big screen for sure. Well, maybe a tribute.
Maybe Gianni, but no. I think I'd been here. Alejandro Dominguez actually, but many people hadn't come to this place. It's like I said, it's squeezed between Brazil and Argentina, and it's got to host for what the president actually said. It might have been the football president or the president of the country. He said this might be the biggest, most significant international event the country has ever hosted, and that makes you wonder again how, despite naming towers after him and despite sort of throwing garlands over him with their words, how disappointed maybe the people of Paraguay might be that Gianni Infantino didn't really show up for the week, and when he did, he was terribly late, given what a significant moment it seemed to be for the country.
Well, it's been good this week for me, hearing at the Sport Industry Awards in London. Some of our podcast listeners, one listener last week was very welcome to hear of the tip about where to get a good curry in Brazil. So, any food tip for Paraguay?
I think lots of good local Paraguay restaurants. Tariq was keen to try out an Indian place he'd found, but when I saw it was a joint Indian and Thai, I thought that's a sort of combination I don't want to explore too much, and safer to stay local cuisine.
Yeah, very, very disappointed not to be able to give you a curry option in Asuncion, but I can assure you they do exist. One place you might want to try, this is a place called Ophelia. We went last night, had a very nice dinner, which, this is not an advert, but we had a very nice dinner there. It was fine, nice place. You know what, the weird thing is, I didn't know why there was so much military on the streets. It feels much safer than a lot of other places we've been around the world with FIFA. What did you make of it, Martyn?
Yeah, I mean, walking along the street, you feel everywhere is incredibly safe, but there is this looming presence of the military, which I don't know if that is meant to show FIFA that you're being protected, or this is more normal. But it does jar slightly.
No sword dancing or camels, though, there. Unlike how the week began for Gianni Infantino. I don't know if he was part of that official welcome in Qatar, but it was certainly at the state banquet. Nasser Al-Khelaifi was also there. He was with Piers Morgan, who was talking about them looking ahead to the Champions League final. It seems PSG's Champions League final against Inter Milan was quite a talking point around the state banquet. Unsure if Donald Trump was asked to give a prediction.
Well, the Emir famously goes incognito, apparently, to watch PSG among the ultras, or is that an apocryphal story?
I'm sure he'll be there for the Club World Cup in the USA in June.
And this isn't us just piling on FIFA. It's largely prompted by UEFA as one of the leading governing bodies of the world, choosing to issue that unprecedented statement criticising FIFA and Gianni Infantino.
And walking out.
Yeah. But you're still there, and hopefully everyone's still listening to us. Enjoy the rest of the time in Paraguay.
Gracias, señor.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Goodbye for now.